I drove for 11 hours straight, the last 60 miles on autopilot, my mind already walking through rooms I hadn't seen in 3 years. The driveway looked the same, the mailbox still leaned slightly left. The oak tree had grown taller. I parked behind a car I didn't recognize, a gray sedan with dealer plates still in the window. My key slid into the lock and stopped halfway. I pulled it out, looked at it, tried again. Same result. The deadbolt was new, brushed nickel instead of brass. I knocked, waited, knocked again, harder. The door opened 6 inches. My son stood there, one hand on the frame, blocking the gap. He was taller than I remembered, broader in the shoulders. He wore a polo shirt I'd never seen and glasses he didn't need 3 years ago. "Hey," I said. He didn't move. "What are you doing here?" "I live here." "No," he said. "You don't live here anymore." The words landed flat, rehearsed. I looked past him into the hallway. The walls were a different color. The mirror was gone. A woman's jacket hung on the coat rack. "We need to talk," I said. "There's nothing to talk about." He started to close the door. I put my hand against it, not pushing, just holding. "I've been gone 3 years taking care of your grandmother. I called, I sent money, I told you I was coming back. Things changed." "What things?" "Everything." He looked at my hand on the door. "You need to leave." "This is my house." "Was," he said. "It was your house." A woman appeared behind him, thin, blonde, mid-30s. She put her hand on his shoulder and looked at me with the kind of polite concern you'd give a confused delivery driver. "Can we help you?" she asked. "I'm his father." "Oh." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "He mentioned you might stop by. We're sort of in the middle of something." "I'm not stopping by. I'm coming home." My son's jaw tightened. "You can't just show up and expect everything to be the same." "I expect my key to work." "We changed the locks," the woman said, "for security." "Security from what?" Neither of them answered. My son's hand moved to the doorframe, his knuckles white. "I have a lease," he said. "Everything's legal." "A lease on my house?" "It's complicated." "Then uncomplicate it." The woman leaned in, whispered something. My son nodded. "We'll send you some information," he said, "but you can't be here right now." "Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem." He closed the door. I heard the deadbolt slide into place, then a chain lock, then footsteps moving away. I stood there for a full minute, hand still raised, knuckles an inch from the wood. A moving truck passed on the street behind me. Someone's dog barked 3 houses down. The world kept moving while mine stopped. I walked back to my car, got in, sat with my hands on the wheel. The house looked exactly the same from the outside. Same shutters, same porch light, same crack in the sidewalk I'd been meaning to fix for 5 years. A man came out of the house next door, older, 70s, wearing a cardigan despite the heat. He walked to the property line, pretended to check his mailbox, glanced at me twice. I got out of the car. He looked up, nodded once. "Thought that was you." "Hey, Mr. Brennan. Heard you were out of town." "I was. Came back today." He looked at the house, then back at me. "They told everyone you weren't coming back." "They?" Your boy and his wife. Said you'd moved somewhere permanent. Retirement situation." "I'm 47. "That's what I thought." He folded his arms. "They've been here about a year. Act like they own the place." "They changed the locks." "Changed a lot of things." He stepped closer, lowered his voice. "You should check who's been using your name." "What do you mean?" "The homeowners association, the water board. Couple of complaints filed with the county. All came through with your signature." "I didn't sign anything." "I know." He looked at the house again. "But somebody did." I felt something shift in my chest, like a gear catching after years of rust. "What kind of complaints?" "Noise, disputes with contractors, threatening behavior toward a postal worker." He shook his head. "None of it sounded like you, but your name was on every one." "Where?" "Public records, county clerk's office. Some of it's online if you know where to look." I pulled out my phone, opened the browser. My hands were shaking. "You staying somewhere?" he asked. "Not yet. There's a motel off Route 9. Clean enough. Owned by the Patels, good people." "Thanks. And hey." He waited until I looked at him. "I don't know what happened between you and your boy, but what they're doing, using your name like that, that's not right." I nodded, got back in the car, drove. The motel was exactly where he said, single story, painted turquoise, a vertical neon sign that said vacancy in half-working letters. I paid cash for a week, took a room at the far end, dropped my bag on the bed and sat down. The room smelled like bleach and old carpet. The TV was bolted to the dresser. The shower dripped. I stared at the wall and tried to think, but my brain kept replaying the moment my son closed the door, the sound of the deadbolt, the look in his eyes like I was a stranger who'd overstayed his welcome. I hadn't slept in 20 hours. I lay down, closed my eyes, and fell into something too restless to be called sleep. When I woke, it was dark outside. My phone said 11:47 p.m. I had 3 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize and 1 voicemail. I listened. "Hi, this is Jennifer from the Lakewood Community Association. We're following up on the incident report filed last month regarding your altercation with a landscaping crew. We'd like to resolve this before it escalates. Please call us back at your earliest convenience." I'd never heard of the Lakewood Community Association. I'd never had an altercation with anyone. I saved the voicemail, opened the browser, searched my name and the town. The first result was a local news site. The headline read, "Resident accused of harassment in ongoing neighborhood dispute." My name was in the second paragraph, spelled correctly, connected to a complaint filed 2 months ago about threatening phone calls to a contractor. I scrolled down, another article. Homeowner faces possible fines over unpaid utility bills and disorderly conduct. My name, my address. None of it true. I searched deeper. Found a public records database. Typed in my name, 14 entries. Complaint filed with the water board for excessive late-night noise. Complaint filed with the post office for verbal abuse of a mail carrier. Complaint filed with county animal control for unleashing an aggressive dog in a public park. I didn't own a dog. I'd been 2 states away when half of these things supposedly happened. Every entry listed my name, my address, and a signature that looked close enough to mine that no one would question it unless they knew me well. I sat back, stared at the screen, felt the anger build slow and cold. This wasn't random. This wasn't a mistake. Someone had been living as me, filing complaints as me, making enemies as me, and I had no idea how long it had been going on. I closed the laptop, walked outside, stood in the parking lot under the fluorescent lights. A semi rolled past on the highway. The air smelled like diesel and rain. I thought about my son's face when he told me I didn't live there anymore. The certainty in his voice, the woman's hand on his shoulder, the way they'd closed the door like I was a problem they'd already solved. I pulled out my phone, opened the calendar, scrolled back 3 years, found the date I'd left, found every call I'd made since then, every message I'd sent, every update I'd given about my mother's condition, about the house I was living in, about when I'd be back. I'd told them everything. They'd used it all? I went back inside, sat on the bed, opened my laptop again, and started making a list. The next morning, I drove to the county clerk's office. It was a brick building downtown, 3 stories, with narrow windows and a parking lot that was always full. I found a spot 2 blocks away, walked in through the side entrance, took the stairs to the 2nd floor. The clerk's office was at the end of the hall, a long room with fluorescent lights and rows of filing cabinets. A woman sat behind the counter, 50-something, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. "Help you?" she asked. "I need to see public records. Complaints filed under my name." She looked up. "What's the name?" I told her. She typed it into her computer, frowned, typed some more. "You've been busy," she said. "That's the problem. I haven't." She looked at me over her glasses. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I didn't file any of those complaints. Someone else did, using my name." "You have ID?" I showed her my driver's license. She compared it to the screen, nodded slowly. "I'm going to need to pull the physical files. That'll take a few minutes." "I'll wait." She disappeared into the back. I stood at the counter, looked around the room. 2 other people waited in plastic chairs by the door, both staring at their phones. A man in a suit stood at a copier, feeding pages one at a time. The clerk came back with a folder. She set it on the counter, opened it. 14 complaints filed over the last 18 months. All under your name, all with your address, all signed. She pulled out the top sheet, showed me. The signature was close. Not perfect, but close. Someone who'd seen my signature enough times to fake it convincingly. "Can I get copies?" I asked. "Sure, 25 cents a page." All of them. She made copies while I stood there, stacking them into a neat pile. When she finished, I paid, folded the stack, put it in my jacket. "For what it's worth," she said, "none of those complaints went anywhere. Most were dismissed for lack of evidence. But my name's still on them. Public record," she said. "Can't erase that." I thanked her, left, walked back to my car, sat inside with the copies spread across the passenger seat, read through each one carefully. The first complaint was about loud music after midnight, filed by someone named Gordon Hayes, who lived 4 houses down from me. The complaint said I'd been playing music loud enough to shake windows, that I'd been warned twice, that I'd responded with profanity. I'd never met Gordon Hayes. I'd been living in Ohio when this was filed. The second complaint was about a dog, an unleashed Rottweiler in Fletcher Park. The complaint said I'd let the dog chase children, that I'd laughed when parents complained, that I'd threatened to let it off the leash more often. I didn't own a dog. I'd never been to Fletcher Park. The third complaint was filed by a contractor named Luis Mendoza. It said I'd hired him to repair a fence, then refused to pay, then called him 15 times in one night, leaving threatening voicemails. I'd never hired Luis Mendoza. I didn't know who he was. Every complaint followed the same pattern. Someone else's story. My name, my signature. I pulled out my phone, called the number from the voicemail last night. A woman answered on the second ring. Lakewood Community Association, this is Jennifer. This is about the complaint filed under my name. Oh, good. We've been trying to reach you. The landscaping crew is willing to settle if you agree to mediation. I didn't have an altercation with any landscaping crew. Silence. I'm sorry, who is this? I told her my name. Then you're the one who filed the complaint. No, someone filed it using my name. I wasn't even in town when it happened. More silence. That's a serious accusation, she said. It's the truth. Do you have proof you weren't in town? I was taking care of my mother in Ohio. I have medical records, bills, witnesses. Then you'll need to provide those to the county. We only process complaints. We don't investigate them. Who filed the original complaint? I can't disclose that without a formal request. It's my name on the report. It's still confidential. You'll need to submit a written request and wait for approval. I hung up, started the car, drove to the library. The library was downtown, a Carnegie building with tall windows and stone steps. I went inside, found an empty computer terminal in the back, logged in, searched my name again, found a Facebook page I didn't create. The profile picture was a stock photo of a man about my age, generic enough to be anyone. The page had been active for 2 years, posting sporadically about local events, town politics, complaints about traffic and noise. I clicked through the posts. Most were mundane, a few were aggressive. One from 6 months ago said, "Some people need to learn respect, or they'll learn it the hard way." It had 3 likes. I checked the friends list. 47 people, most of them local. Some I recognized from the neighborhood, some I didn't. I clicked on the About section. It listed my address, my high school, my job from 10 years ago. Someone had built a version of me online, piece by piece, detail by detail, close enough to be believable. I logged out, walked to the reference desk. A young woman with short hair and a name tag that said Emily looked up from a book. "Can I help you?" "I need to find out who registered a Facebook page." "You mean like who created it?" "Yes." She shook her head. "That's not public information. Facebook doesn't release that unless there's a legal request." "What if it's my name?" "Then you'd need to contact Facebook directly and prove it's fraudulent. They have a process, but it takes a while." "How long?" "Weeks, maybe months." I thanked her, left, walked back to my car, sat there staring at the steering wheel. Someone had spent months building a fake version of my life. Not to steal money, not to commit fraud, just to poison the ground I'd eventually walk back on, to make sure that when I came home, I'd find a town full of people who already hated me for things I'd never done. It was efficient, it was patient, it was cruel. I started the car, drove to the hardware store on Route 9. The hardware store was a local place, family-owned, with creaky floors and shelves stacked to the ceiling. I walked in, found the aisle with locks and keys, grabbed a rekeying kit, a set of lockpicks for practice, and a heavy-duty padlock. At the counter, a kid in his 20s rang me up. His name tag said Trevor. "You know how to use this stuff?" he asked, holding up the rekeying kit. "I'll figure it out." "YouTube's got some good tutorials." "Thanks." He bagged everything, handed it to me. "You doing some home security?" "Something like that." I paid, walked out, stopped halfway across the parking lot. My son's car was parked 2 rows over. The gray sedan with dealer plates. He was sitting inside, talking on the phone, animated, gesturing with his free hand. I changed direction, walked toward him. He saw me, stopped mid-sentence, ended the call. I knocked on the window. He rolled it down an inch. "What do you want?" he asked. "To talk." "We already talked." "No. You shut a door in my face." He looked at the steering wheel, then back at me. "What do you want me to say?" "How about the truth?" "The truth is you left. You were gone for 3 years. We had to move on." "Move on doesn't mean changing the locks and erasing me." "Erasing you?" He laughed, bitter. "You erased yourself. I was taking care of your grandmother. You had options. You chose her over us. And we were here. His voice cracked. We were here, and you weren't, and at some point we had to make decisions without you. What decisions? He looked away. It doesn't matter now. It matters to me. That's your problem. I put my hand on the car door, leaned in. I know someone's been using my name, filing complaints, creating fake accounts, making people think I'm someone I'm not. His face went blank. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. You're paranoid. I have copies of the complaints. I've seen the fake Facebook page. Someone did this on purpose, and you know about it. He started the car. Move. Not until you tell me what's going on. Move, or I'll call the police. For what? Standing in a parking lot? For harassment. I stepped back. He reversed fast, jerked the wheel, drove toward the exit. I watched him go, wrote down the license plate number even though I already knew it, then walked back to my car. I sat there for a while, thinking. Then I drove to the house, parked across the street 3 houses down where I could see the front door and the driveway. Waited. An hour later, the woman came out. She wore yoga pants and a zip-up jacket, sunglasses pushed up on her head. She got into a white SUV, backed out, drove past me without looking. I followed her. She drove to a coffee shop downtown, parked, went inside. I parked at the far end of the lot, watched through the window. She ordered, sat at a table near the front, pulled out her phone. I went inside, bought a coffee, sat 2 tables away with my back to her. She talked on the phone for 10 minutes. I couldn't hear most of it, but I caught fragments. Something about a meeting, something about paperwork, something about keeping him away until it's finalized. When she finished, she stood, walked out. I waited 30 seconds, followed. She drove to a real estate office on Maple Street. Parked, went inside. I stayed in my car, watched. 20 minutes later, she came out with a man in a suit, both of them smiling, shaking hands. She got back in her SUV, drove home. I didn't follow this time. I drove back to the motel, sat on the bed, and thought about what Mr. Brennan had said. Check who's been using your name. Not just using it, weaponizing it. I opened my laptop, pulled up the county property records, searched my address. The house was still listed under my name, but there was a pending transfer notice dated 3 weeks ago. The buyer's name was listed as a trust, Brennan Family Holdings, LLC. My son's last name wasn't Brennan, neither was the woman's. I searched the trust. It was registered 2 months ago, with a P.O. box address in the next county. I leaned back, stared at the ceiling. They weren't just living in my house. They were trying to take it, legally, quietly, using my name to create a paper trail that made it look like I'd abandoned the property, like I'd become a problem, like I was unfit to keep it. And when I came back, they'd expected me to disappear again. I pulled out my phone, called a lawyer I'd used years ago for a contract dispute. He answered on the 3rd ring. It's me, I said. I need help. We talked for 20 minutes. He told me what I already suspected. If the transfer went through, it would be nearly impossible to reverse without a lengthy legal battle. He told me I needed to file an injunction immediately, that I needed to prove I'd never abandoned the property, that I needed documentation for everything. How long will that take? I asked. Months, maybe longer. I don't have months. Then you need to stop the transfer before it's finalized, but you'll need leverage. What kind of leverage? Proof that they forged your signature, proof that they misrepresented your intentions, something concrete. I'll get it. I hung up, grabbed my jacket, drove back to the county clerk's office. The same woman was behind the counter. Back again? She said. I need copies of all property transfer documents for my address. Everything filed in the last 6 months. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. I'll pull them. She came back with a thicker folder this time. I paid for copies, took them back to the motel, spread them on the bed. 3 documents. The first was a quitclaim deed transfer request, filed 8 weeks ago with my signature at the bottom. The second was a notarized statement saying I intended to transfer ownership to my son due to financial hardship. The third was a power of attorney agreement giving my son legal authority to manage my affairs. All 3 signatures looked like mine. Close enough to pass, not close enough to be real. I took pictures of each one, emailed them to the lawyer with a note. None of these are mine. What now? He responded 10 minutes later. Get a handwriting expert, file a police report, move fast. I called the non-emergency police line, explained the situation. The dispatcher told me to come in and file a report in person. I drove to the station, a squat brick building near the highway. Inside, a desk sergeant took my information, listened to my story, typed slowly into a computer. So, you're saying someone forged your signature? he asked. Yes. And you were out of town when these documents were filed? Yes. Can you prove that? I showed him receipts, medical bills, a letter from my mother's hospice care facility with dates. He made copies, added them to the file. This is going to take some time, he said. Fraud investigations aren't quick. How much time? Weeks, maybe longer. What do I do in the meantime? Stay away from the property. Don't confront anyone. Let us handle it. I thanked him, left, drove back to the motel. Sat on the bed and stared at the wall. Stay away. Don't confront. I'd already done both. I lay down, closed my eyes, tried to think. But every time I started to plan, I saw my son's face in the parking lot. The way he'd looked at me like I was the problem, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. That night, I dreamed about the house. I walked through every room, touched every wall, opened every closet, but the furniture was gone. The walls were bare. My footsteps echoed. When I reached the bedroom at the end of the hall, the door was locked. I knocked. No one answered. I knocked again, harder, and woke up with my fist against the motel room wall. It was 4 a.m. I got up, showered, made coffee with the single-serve machine on the dresser. Tasted like plastic, but it was hot. I sat at the table, opened my laptop, started mapping everything I knew. My son and his wife had moved into the house a year ago. They'd been using my name for at least 18 months. They'd filed complaints to establish a pattern of behavior. They'd created a fake online presence. They'd forged documents to transfer the property. They'd done all of this while I was gone, while I was distracted, while I was calling them every week to check in. They'd planned this, and I'd made it easy. I pulled up the fake Facebook page again, scrolled through the posts. Most were generic, but a few stood out. Posts about being fed up with the town, about wanting to leave, about feeling disconnected. Posts designed to make it look like I'd abandoned the place on purpose. I clicked on the profile picture, downloaded it, ran it through a reverse image search, found the original stock photo on a free image site. Someone had downloaded it, cropped it, uploaded it. I checked the page's creation date. 2 years ago, right around the time I'd left. They'd started the day I was gone. I closed the laptop, stood, paced the room. My chest felt tight. My hands were shaking. I forced myself to breathe, to think, to focus. The lawyer said I needed leverage. The police said I needed time. But I didn't have time. The transfer was pending. Once it finalized, I'd be fighting uphill. I needed to stop it now. I grabbed my jacket, got in the car, drove to the house. It was just after 5 a.m., still dark, the street empty. I parked at the end of the block, walked up the sidewalk, stopped at the property line. The house was dark. No lights, no movement. I walked around back, checked the gate, locked, climbed over it, dropped into the backyard. The grass was longer than I'd kept it. The garden beds were overgrown. The grill I'd bought 10 years ago was rusted and sitting crooked on the patio. I tried the back door, locked, looked through the window. The kitchen was different, new cabinets, different table. The walls were painted a pale gray I'd never liked. I walked to the garage, tried the side door. It opened. Inside, the garage was a mess. Boxes stacked everywhere, tools I didn't recognize, a workbench covered in paint cans and old newspapers. I looked through the boxes. Most were full of junk, nothing useful. Then I found one labeled Documents. Inside were bills, receipts, bank statements, all in my name, all with signatures I didn't make. I took pictures of everything, then closed the box, put it back, left through the side door, climbed back over the gate, walked to my car. By the time I got back to the motel, the sun was rising. I uploaded the photos to my laptop, emailed them to the lawyer with a note. Found these in the garage. How does this change things? He responded an hour later. This is good, very good. File an emergency injunction today. I'll draft the paperwork. I called him and we talked through the details. He said he'd have the documents ready by noon, that I needed to file them at the courthouse before close of business. What happens after that? I asked. Judge reviews it. If they see enough evidence of fraud, they'll freeze the transfer until there's a hearing. And if they don't? Then you're filing a lawsuit, and it'll take years. I hung up, showered, changed clothes, drove downtown to wait. At noon, the lawyer emailed me the documents. I printed them at the library, drove to the courthouse, filed them with the clerk. She stamped them, told me I'd hear back within a week. What if the transfer goes through before then? I asked. Then you'll need to appeal. I thanked her, left, walked back to my car, stood in the parking lot staring at my phone. A week, 7 days. Anything could happen in 7 days. I got in the car, drove to the diner on Route 9, ordered coffee and sat in a booth by the window. The diner was busy, lunch rush, people coming and going. I watched them, listened to fragments of conversation, tried to calm down. A woman slid into the booth across from me. Older, 60s, gray hair pulled back, sharp eyes. She wore a wool coat and carried a leather bag. "You're the one who filed the injunction," she said. I looked at her. "Who are you?" "I work at the courthouse. Saw your name, put two and two together." She set her bag on the table. "I know your son." "How?" "He hired me 6 months ago. Paralegal work. I helped him file the transfer paperwork." I didn't say anything. She leaned forward. "He told me you'd signed everything willingly, that you were relocating permanently, that it was all mutual." "It wasn't." "I know. I saw the handwriting. I've been doing this 30 years. I know a forgery when I see one." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I couldn't prove it, and because he paid well." She opened her bag, pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. "But now I can." I opened the folder. Inside were copies of emails between my son and the woman, discussing the transfer, discussing how to handle questions, discussing what to do if I showed up. One email said, "If he comes back, we'll deal with it. He won't stay." Another said, "Make sure the complaints keep coming. The more documented issues, the better." I looked up. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because I don't like being lied to." She stood. "Good luck." She left before I could say anything else. I sat there staring at the folder, feeling something shift, not hope, something harder. I took the folder, drove back to the motel, scanned every page, emailed them to the lawyer. He called me 10 minutes later. "This is everything we need," he said. "The judge will freeze the transfer, guaranteed." "What happens to them?" "Depends. Could be fraud charges, could be a civil suit, could be both." "How long?" "Couple of days for the freeze. After that, it's up to the prosecutor." I hung up, sat back, breathed. For the first time in days, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. But I wasn't done. I spent the next 3 days gathering everything I could. I went to the post office, got statements showing mail forwarded without my consent. I went to the utility companies, got records showing accounts opened in my name. I went to the homeowners association, got copies of complaints filed against me. I tracked down Luis Mendoza, the contractor, and got a signed statement saying he'd never worked for me. Every piece of evidence I found, I copied, documented, added to the file. On the 4th day, the lawyer called. "Judge granted the injunction. Transfers frozen." "What now?" "Now they know you're coming." I hung up, got in the car, drove to the house. Parked in the driveway this time, right behind the gray sedan. I knocked on the door. The woman opened it, saw me, tried to close it. I put my hand on the frame. "We need to talk," I said. "Get off my property." "It's not your property." She stepped back. My son appeared behind her, phone in his hand. "I'm calling the police," he said. "Go ahead. Tell them you've been forging my signature for 18 months. He stopped. I held up the folder. "I have everything. The complaints, the fake Facebook page, the emails, the notarized lies, all of it." The woman's face went white. "You can't prove any of that," my son said. "Judge already did. Transfer's frozen. You're done." He looked at the woman. She looked at the floor. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want you to explain why. You weren't here." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer you're getting." I stepped inside. He moved back. The woman moved back. "You took my house," I said. "You took my name. You tried to erase me. Why?" Neither of them answered. "Was it money? Was it the house? Was it just convenient?" My son's jaw tightened. "You left us." "I left to take care of your grandmother." "You left us," he said again. "You chose her. You chose Ohio. You chose everything but us." "And we were drowning." His voice cracked. "We were drowning, and you weren't here. And when we asked for help, you sent money like that would fix it. What did you need?" "You." He looked away. "But you were too busy being the good son to be a good father." The words hit harder than I expected. "So you decided to steal my house?" "We decided to survive," the woman said, "and you made it easy." I looked at her, then at him. "You could have told me." "We tried." "Not hard enough." "You didn't want to hear it?" My son stepped forward. "Every time we called, you'd talk about Mom, about the house, about how you'd be back soon. You never asked how we were. You never asked what we needed. You just kept saying you'd be back, like that fixed everything." I didn't have an answer for that. "So yeah," he said. "We made a decision. We moved in. We took over. And when you came back, We were going to tell you to move on, because that's what you taught us to do. I taught you to lie and forge signatures? You taught us to survive without you. We stood there, the three of us, the air thick with years of things unsaid. I'm taking the house back, I said, and if you fight me, I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. Do it, the woman said. We don't care anymore. But my son's face said otherwise. I left, walked back to my car, sat behind the wheel. My hands were shaking, not from anger, from something worse, because part of what he'd said was true. I drove back to the motel, sat on the bed, stared at the wall. The lawyer called that night, said the prosecutor was reviewing the case, that charges were likely, that I should be prepared for a long process. I told him I understood, but I didn't care about the process. I cared about the moment my son told me I'd left them, that I'd chosen wrong, that I'd made survival look like betrayal. I spent the next week at the motel, waiting. The lawyer sent updates. The prosecutor filed charges. My son and the woman were issued a summons. The house was officially frozen pending resolution. I didn't go back, didn't call, didn't push. I just waited. On the 10th day, Mr. Brennan knocked on my motel door. I opened it. He stood there holding a newspaper. "Thought you'd want to see this," he said. The headline read, "Local man charged with fraud in property transfer scheme." My son's name was in the first paragraph. I read the article twice. It detailed everything, the forged signatures, the fake complaints, the identity theft. It quoted the prosecutor saying this was one of the most elaborate schemes they'd seen in years. I handed the paper back. "You okay?" Mr. Brennan asked. "I don't know." "For what it's worth, you did the right thing." "Did I?" He didn't answer. I closed the door, sat on the bed, thought about my son's face when he'd said I'd taught him to survive without me. I thought about the 3 years I'd spent in Ohio, taking care of my mother, calling every week, sending money, thinking I was doing the right thing. I thought about the day I came home and found the locks changed, and I realized something. Revenge wasn't going to fix this. Taking back the house wouldn't fix this. Nothing would. Because the damage wasn't in the signatures or the complaints or the fake Facebook page. The damage was in the years I'd been gone, in the phone calls I'd made but the conversations I'd never had, in the assumption that being a good son meant I could stop being a good father. I'd won. The house was mine, the transfer was stopped, my name was cleared, but I'd lost something bigger. I sat there for a long time, staring at the wall, feeling the weight of it. Then I stood, grabbed my jacket, walked out to my car, drove to the house, parked in the driveway, knocked on the door. My son opened it. He looked tired, older, like the last 2 weeks had aged him years. "What do you want?" he asked. "To talk?" "We already did that." "No," we yelled. "I want to talk." He didn't move. "Please," I said. He stepped aside. I walked in. The woman was sitting on the couch, arms folded. She didn't look up. My son closed the door, leaned against it. "I'm not apologizing," he said. "I'm not asking you to." "Then what?" "I want to understand." He looked at me, and for a moment I saw the kid he used to be, the one who'd follow me around the hardware store, the one who'd help me fix the fence, the one who'd believed I could fix anything. "You really don't get it, do you?" he said. "No, I don't. You left. And yeah, I know why. I know it was the right thing to do. But you left, and we were here, and everything fell apart, and you kept calling like nothing was wrong." "What was wrong?" "Everything." He pushed off the door, started pacing. "I lost my job. We couldn't pay rent. We had nowhere to go. And you kept sending $200 a month like that would cover it. You never told me. Because you never asked." He stopped, looked at me. "Every time we talked, you'd say, 'How are you?' And I'd say, 'Fine.' And you'd say, 'Good.' And then you'd talk about Mom. You never pushed. You never asked if fine meant fine or if it meant I was drowning." I didn't say anything. "So yeah," he said. "We moved in. We used your name. We made it work. And when you came back, I didn't know what to say, so I shut the door. You could have told me the truth. Would you have listened?" I wanted to say yes, but I didn't know if that was true. "I'm sorry," I said. He looked at me, surprised. "I should have asked," I said. "I should have pushed. I should have known." "You were doing your best?" "It wasn't good enough." He didn't argue. We stood there, the silence heavy. "What happens now?" he asked. "I don't know." "Are you pressing charges?" "That's not up to me. The prosecutor's already involved." He nodded, looked at the floor. "But I can talk to them," I said. "I can tell them you were desperate, that it wasn't malicious." "Will that help?" "I don't know. Maybe." He looked at the woman on the couch, then back at me. Why would you do that? Because you're my son. I stole your house. You survived. I taught you that. He didn't say anything, but his eyes were wet. I'm taking the house back, I said. But I'll help you find a place. I'll help you get back on your feet, if you'll let me. Why? Because I left once. I'm not doing it again. He looked at me for a long time, then nodded. I left, walked back to my car, sat behind the wheel. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it was a start. I called the lawyer, told him I wanted to talk to the prosecutor about reducing the charges. He said he'd arrange it. I drove back to the motel, lay down, stared at the ceiling. The next morning, I got a call from the prosecutor's office. They wanted me to come in, make a statement, clarify my position. I drove downtown, sat in a small gray office, talked to a woman in a suit who took notes and asked questions. You're saying you want the charges reduced? She asked. Yes. Why? Because he's my son, and because I could have prevented this if I'd been paying attention. That doesn't excuse fraud. I know, but it explains it. She looked at me, tapped her pen on the desk. The evidence is strong. We could get convictions. I know, but you're asking us not to. I'm asking you to consider the context. She leaned back. I'll take it under advisement, but I can't promise anything. I understand. I left, drove back to the motel, waited. 3 days later, the lawyer called, said the prosecutor agreed to reduce the charges to misdemeanor fraud, probation, restitution, no jail time. They're lucky, the lawyer said, and so are you. I hung up, sat on the bed, felt something loosen in my chest. It wasn't over. There were still legal filings, court dates, paperwork, but the worst was behind us. I called my son. He didn't answer. I left a message. Charges are reduced. No jail. We'll figure out the rest. He called back an hour later. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me. Just do better. I will. We hung up. I sat there, phone in my hand, and realized I believed him. The next week, I moved back into the house. My son and the woman moved out, took their things, left the keys on the counter. I didn't watch them go. The house felt empty. The walls were still the wrong color. The furniture was gone. The rooms echoed. But it was mine. I spent the first night there walking through each room, touching the walls, opening closets, standing in doorways. In the morning, I started painting. Mr. Brennan came over, helped me move furniture, told stories about the neighborhood, asked if I was staying. Yeah, I said. I'm staying. Good. We painted for hours, didn't talk much, just worked. By the end of the day, the living room was white again, the color I remembered. I stood in the middle of the room, looked around, felt something settle. This was home, not because I'd won, not because I'd fought, but because I'd chosen it. A week later, my son called, asked if he could stop by. I said yes. He came over that afternoon, stood on the porch, hands in his pockets. I got a job, he said. Warehouse work. It's not much, but it's something. That's good. Yeah. We stood there. Can I come in? He asked. I stepped aside. He walked through the living room, looked at the walls, the empty spaces where furniture used to be. Looks different, he said. It's getting there. He nodded. I'm sorry for all of it. I know. I don't know if that's enough. It's a start. He looked at me. Can we try again? Yes. He nodded, and for a moment I saw relief in his face. We didn't hug, didn't shake hands, just stood there, the space between us smaller than it had been. I'll call you, he said. Okay. He left. I watched him drive away, then closed the door, walked back to the living room, sat on the floor with my back against the wall. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt like peace. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through old messages, found the ones I'd sent from Ohio, read them one by one. They were all the same. Short updates, check-ins, assurances that I'd be back soon. I'd been so focused on getting home that I'd forgotten to ask what home meant to the people I'd left behind. I put the phone down, leaned my head back, closed my eyes. The damage was done. The mistakes were made. The house was mine again, but the cost was higher than I'd expected. Still, I was here, and so was he. And maybe that was enough. Over the next few months, we rebuilt, slowly, carefully. He'd stop by once a week, help with repairs, drink coffee, talk about work. We didn't talk about what happened, not directly, but it was there, in the pauses, in the careful way we chose our words. The town moved on. The complaints were dismissed. The fake Facebook page was taken down. People forgot. But I didn't. I carried it with me. The knowledge that I'd failed. that I'd been so focused on doing the right thing that I'd missed the people who needed me most. I couldn't fix that. Not completely, but I could be here now. And I was. One night, 6 months later, my son showed up with his wife. We sat on the porch, drank beer, watched the street. "We're moving," he said. "Found a place across town. Small, but it's ours." "That's good." "Yeah." He looked at me. "I wanted to say thank you for talking to the prosecutor, for helping us get back on our feet. You did the work, but you gave us the chance." I nodded. We sat in silence for a while, the kind that didn't need filling. "You know," he said, "I used to think you abandoned us. But I get it now. You were trying to do the right thing. You just didn't know we needed you to do it here." I should have asked. "Yeah, you should have." He looked at his wife, then back at me. "But we should have told you." "Yeah, you should have." We smiled. Not much, but enough. They left an hour later. I stood on the porch, watched them drive away, felt something close to peace. The house was quiet again, but it didn't feel empty. I walked inside, locked the door, turned off the lights. Tomorrow I'd paint the bedroom, maybe fix the fence, maybe call Mr. Brennan, see if he needed help with anything, but tonight I'd just sit. And that was enough. The end. I spent the next 2 weeks working on the house during the day and gathering information at night. The injunction held. The transfer was frozen. My son and his wife stayed in the house but kept their distance, curtains drawn, cars parked in the garage instead of the driveway. I didn't push. Not yet. I used the time to build my case, to map every lie, every forged document, every fake complaint. I tracked down everyone who'd filed against me, explained what happened, got statements. Luis Mendoza, the contractor, remembered the calls, showed me records of 15 voicemails left in one night, all from a number registered to my address but not my phone. Gordon Hayes, the neighbor who'd complained about noise, said he'd filed the report after someone claiming to be me called him drunk at 2 a.m. He'd saved the number. It wasn't mine. The postal worker said she'd never been threatened, but had been told by her supervisor that I'd filed a harassment complaint against her. She'd been terrified for months. Every person I talked to gave me the same look. Confusion mixed with relief. They'd believed the complaints because my name was on them. Now they knew better. I documented everything, added it to the file, sent updates to the lawyer. "This is airtight," he said, "but you need to decide what you want. Do you want the house back, or do you want them prosecuted?" "Both." "That's going to be hard. The prosecutor will push for jail time if you push for full restitution." "Then that's what we do." "You sure?" I thought about my son closing the door, about the woman's hand on his shoulder, about the 3 years I'd spent calling every week while they built a life on my name. "Yeah, I'm sure." The lawyer filed additional motions. The prosecutor opened a criminal investigation. My son and his wife were served with subpoenas. 3 days later, my son called. "We need to talk," he said. "Then come over." Not at the house, somewhere neutral. We met at the diner on Route 9, mid-afternoon, empty except for an old man at the counter and a waitress refilling ketchup bottles. My son sat across from me, hands folded on the table. He looked thinner, older, like the weight of everything was pressing down on him. "This needs to stop," he said. "You started it." "I know, and I'm sorry." "Little late for that." "I know." He looked at the table. "But we can't keep doing this. The charges are getting worse. We're going to lose everything. You already lost. You just don't want to admit it." He looked up, eyes red. "What do you want from me?" "The truth." "I told you the truth." "No, you told me excuses. I want to know why you thought this was okay." He leaned back, rubbed his face. "It wasn't supposed to go this far." "Then how far was it supposed to go?" "Just until you came back. We were going to tell you we'd been taking care of the place, that we'd kept it up, that we deserved to stay. We thought you'd understand." "And the complaints? The fake Facebook page? The forged signatures?" "That was her idea." He glanced toward the door like she might walk in. "She said we needed a paper trail. She said if you came back and fought us, we'd need proof that you'd been a problem, that you'd abandoned the place. And you went along with it." "I didn't have a choice." "You always have a choice. Not when you're desperate." I didn't say anything. "You don't know what it was like," he said. "After you left, everything fell apart. I lost my job. We couldn't pay rent. We were living in a car for 2 months. And you kept calling, talking about Mom, sending a couple $100 like that fixed anything." "You never told me." Because I didn't want to add to your problems. You were taking care of Grandma. I didn't want to be another burden. So you stole my house instead. I took what I thought I was owed. The words hung in the air, sharp and honest. You thought you were owed my house? You weren't using it. You were gone. We needed it. That doesn't make it yours. It doesn't make it yours either, not anymore. You left, and we filled the space. I looked at him, at the boy I'd raised, at the man he'd become, and felt something shift. Not anger, something colder. You're right, I said. I left. But I didn't abandon you. I was taking care of family. That's what you do. Is it? He leaned forward. Because it felt a lot like you cared more about her than us. And we were drowning. I didn't have an answer for that. He stood. Drop the charges. Let us keep the house. We'll pay you back, whatever you think it's worth. But don't destroy us over this. I'm not destroying you. You did that yourself. Fine. Then finish it. Send us to jail. Take everything. But don't pretend this is about justice. This is about revenge. He walked out. I sat there, staring at the table, feeling the words settle. Revenge. He wasn't wrong. I paid for the coffee I hadn't touched, walked out to my car, sat behind the wheel. I thought about the last 3 years, the phone calls, the money I'd sent, the updates I'd given, the assumption that everything would be fine because I was doing the right thing. I thought about my mother's funeral, how I'd called my son afterward, how he'd said he couldn't make it, how I'd told him it was okay, that I understood. I thought about the drive home, the 11 hours, the moment I'd turned onto my street and seen the house and felt relief. And then I thought about the door closing in my face. That was the moment everything changed. Not when I found out about the complaints, not when I saw the forged signatures. When my own son looked at me and said, "You don't live here anymore." That was the moment I decided to fight. I started the car, drove to the lawyer's office. "We're moving forward," I said. "Full prosecution, no deals." "You sure?" "Yeah." He nodded. "It's going to get ugly." It already is. The case moved fast. The prosecutor filed formal charges: fraud, forgery, identity theft. My son and his wife were arraigned, released on bail, given a court date. I didn't go to the arraignment. Didn't want to see them standing in front of a judge. Didn't want to feel whatever I'd feel watching that. Instead, I focused on the house. Started stripping the walls, pulling up carpet, ripping out the changes they'd made. Every swing of the hammer felt like reclaiming something. Mr. Brennan helped. He'd show up in the mornings with coffee, work until noon, leave without asking questions. "You doing okay?" he asked one day. "Yeah." "You don't look okay." I stopped hammering, looked at him. "I don't know what I'm supposed to feel." "That's normal." "Is it?" "You're fighting your own kid. Nothing about that's normal." He set down his coffee. "But you're doing what you have to do." "Am I?" "Only you can answer that." I went back to hammering. A week before the trial, my son's wife called. "We'll take a deal," she said. "Whatever you want. Just make this stop. It's not up to me anymore." "Bullshit. You could drop the charges." "No, I can't. The prosecutor's handling it now." "Then talk to them. Tell them we'll plead guilty to something lesser. We'll pay restitution. We'll do probation. Just don't send us to jail." "Why should I?" "Because we're family." "You should have thought of that before you forged my signature." She was quiet for a moment. "You're really going to do this?" "Yeah." "You're going to destroy your son's life over a house." "I'm going to hold him accountable for what he did. He was desperate. So was I. I didn't steal anyone's identity." "You weren't here." "That doesn't make what you did okay." She hung up. I sat there, phone in my hand, feeling the weight of it. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in the motel bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every moment, every choice that had led here. I thought about calling the prosecutor, about asking them to reduce the charges, about finding some middle ground. But every time I reached for the phone, I remembered the door closing, the sound of the deadbolt, the look in my son's eyes, and I put the phone down. The trial was set for a Wednesday. I showed up early, sat in the back of the courtroom, watched people file in. My son and his wife sat at the defense table with their lawyer, a young guy in an ill-fitting suit who looked nervous. The prosecutor was older, confident, organized. She laid out the case methodically: the forged signatures, the fake complaints, the identity theft, the financial damage. My son's lawyer argued desperation, argued that my son had been abandoned, that he'd been forced to make impossible choices. The judge listened, asked questions, took notes. I testified, told the truth, showed the documents, the evidence, the timeline. My son's lawyer cross-examined me, tried to make me look vindictive, tried to paint me as an absent father who'd failed his family. Some of it landed. When it was over, the judge said she'd issue a ruling within a week. We filed out. I didn't look at my son, didn't look at his wife, just walked to my car, drove back to the motel, lay down. A week later, the judge ruled, guilty on all counts. Sentencing was set for the following month. I didn't feel relief, didn't feel vindication, just tired. The lawyer called, said the judge had indicated she was leaning toward jail time, that my son and his wife should prepare for that possibility. You can still talk to the prosecutor, he said. Ask for leniency. No. You sure? Yeah. He hung up. I sat on the motel bed, stared at the wall, felt nothing. A month later, I went to the sentencing hearing, sat in the same spot in the back of the courtroom. The judge gave my son 2 years, his wife 18 months. Both would serve half with good behavior. My son didn't look at me. His wife cried. I walked out before they were taken away, got in my car, drove to the house, stood in the driveway looking at it. It was mine again, legally, officially, but it felt hollow. I walked inside, stood in the empty living room, listened to the silence. This was what I'd fought for. This was what I'd won, and it felt like losing. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, and tried to feel something, but there was nothing. Just the house, just the walls, just the empty rooms. I stayed there for hours, waiting for something to shift, for some sense of closure or peace or satisfaction. It never came. Eventually I stood, locked the door, drove back to the motel, lay down, closed my eyes, and tried to sleep. The next morning I started moving back into the house, brought my things from the motel, unpacked slowly, put everything in its place. The house was different. The walls were still the wrong color, the floors creaked in new places, the rooms felt larger, emptier, but it was mine. I spent the first week painting. Mr. Brennan helped. We worked in silence. Didn't talk about the trial, didn't talk about my son. Just painted. By the end of the week, the living room was white again. I stood in the middle of it, looked around, tried to feel something. Still nothing. Mr. Brennan left. I locked the door, sat on the couch I'd bought that morning, and stared at the wall. This was supposed to feel like winning. It didn't. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through old messages, found the ones from my son, read them one by one. They were short, polite, distant, nothing like the kid I remembered. I put the phone down, leaned back, closed my eyes. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt like emptiness. I'd won. I'd taken back what was mine. I'd held them accountable, and I'd lost my son. The realization hit slowly, like cold water rising. I'd been so focused on justice, on revenge, on making them pay, that I'd forgotten what it would cost. I sat there for a long time, feeling it. Then I stood, grabbed my jacket, walked out to my car, drove to the county jail, parked outside, stared at the building, tried to decide if I was really going to do this. Then I got out, walked inside, told the clerk I wanted to see my son. She checked the system, told me visiting hours were over. Please, I said, I need to see him. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. 10 minutes. I waited in a small room with white walls and fluorescent lights. A guard brought my son in, sat him across from me behind a glass partition. He looked thinner, tired, older. He picked up the phone on his side. I picked up mine. What do you want? He asked. To talk? Now? After everything? Yeah. He leaned back, folded his arms. What's left to say? I'm sorry. He stared at me. You're sorry. Yeah. For what? You won. You got the house. You got your revenge. What are you sorry for? For not asking. For not being there. For making you feel like you had to do this. He looked away. That's not an apology. That's an excuse. I know. We sat in silence. I thought this would feel different, I said. What? Winning. He laughed, bitter. You want me to feel sorry for you? No. Then what do you want? I want to know if we can fix this. Fix this? He leaned forward. You sent me to jail. You destroyed my life. And now you want to fix this? Yeah. Why? Because you're my son. I stopped being your son the day you left. The words hit hard. That's not true, I said. Isn't it? You left. You chose Grandma. You chose Ohio. You chose everything but us. And when I tried to survive without you, you punished me for it. You stole my house. You stole my father. We stared at each other through the glass. I can't undo this, I said, but I can try to make it better. How? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. He shook his head. It's too late. Maybe, but I have to try. The guard knocked on the glass. Time was up. My son stood, hung up the phone, walked away without looking back. I sat there, phone still in my hand, watching him disappear through the door. Then I hung up, walked out, got in my car, drove home. The house was dark. I turned on the lights, walked through each room, looked at the walls I'd painted, the floors I'd cleaned, the space I'd reclaimed, and I felt it. The emptiness. I'd won the house, but I'd lost everything else. I sat on the couch, pulled out my phone, started typing a message to my son, then stopped. Words wouldn't fix this. Apologies wouldn't fix this, and nothing would fix this. I deleted the message, put the phone down, leaned back. The house was mine, but it didn't feel like home, and maybe it never would again. I sat there in the silence, feeling the weight of it, knowing I'd made my choice and now I had to live with it. This was what revenge looked like, not triumph, not satisfaction, just emptiness, and the slow, creeping realization that I'd won the wrong fight. I stood, walked to the window, looked out at the street. Tomorrow I'd figure out what came next. Tonight, I'd just sit with what I'd done, and hope that someday, somehow, it would feel like enough. But I knew it wouldn't.